it's Sam. Welcome to my training vlog. I'm an active duty Navy senior chief and a powerlifter, and I'm coming into week 3 of an 8-week cut with RP. For our first check-in, I want to recap. I said I'm going to try to do 7 things every week to be consistent and make sure that if I'm achieving this baseline of items, then I should be successful in my diet. Those 7 things were drinking my 3 liters of water every day, trying to get 10,000 steps at least 5 days a week, and then 7 to 10,000 steps all week. Getting 2 cardio sessions in with Orange Theory Fitness, getting 5 workouts total for the whole week, eating at-home meal prep, tracking everything I eat with the log, and then attempting to hit macros, protein, and calories at a minimum. So those are the 7 things. Week 1, I aced it except for steps. I did everything I was supposed to except for steps. I did not hit that mark. Week 2, I did have a little bit more of a slip up, I think, in one area, and then I balanced it out with another area. So maybe this week, week 3, we'll see like a full scale improvement. But on week 2, I did have 1 fast food meal, and I did have 1 unplanned eating out excursion. And that was because we had a group function for work that I didn't know about until like the day before. And I don't want to miss out on too many of those social events because I'm pretty new here still. So I did mitigate it at least. I didn't consume any alcohol. I have water, and then it was pizza, but it was brick oven pizza. And the slices that I chose to partake in were like very meaty. So hopefully that balanced out a little bit. Those are my 2 mistakes. I did meet everything else. I ate at home. I logged everything, including those meals. I got my steps this week. I got all 5 of my workouts in. I did my 2 cardio sessions. I still consider it to be a pretty successful week. And overall, my weight, I think I hit like kind of a balancing point now because I've been the same weight for a couple days. But in the first 2 weeks from the start point to now, I've lost 4 pounds. So it's tough to say, like I mentioned in the last video, it's tough to say whether that's because I started at a kind of elevated position or what. So now is kind of the real work to see if I ace everything, my self-proclaimed basics, will I succeed or not? And we're gonna find out. So besides my check-in, this video, the one thing I wanted to focus on was addressing like the biggest elephant in the room for me, change-wise, like what is going to make this diet different than all my other diets, and that is that I am completely off of birth control, which is really new for me. Okay, I just recently, and when I say that, I mean the first week of January, so in the first week of the diet, the first week of January, I had my Nexplanon arm implant removed. So I am completely, there's nothing outside factor affecting my body and my hormones besides what's naturally occurring. Every diet I've done has been under the guise of like, well, we don't know for sure, you know, what's hormonal, what's thyroid related, and what's just you sucking at the diet. Okay, so to examine my history, I started birth control at 16 years old. My mom put me on it because she had been on it at around that age because her mom had put her on it. I had no medical necessity for going on birth control. There were no immediate indicators that something was going on with me that should be diagnosed or controlled through birth control. So we just went on it as a preventative, like I've seen some other people refer to it as like a coming of age, you know. It was my turn to go on birth control. And my mom was concerned about the increasing sexuality of being a teenager and stuff like that. So preventative measures were taken. Anyway, so I continued on the pill when I got into the Navy, and I think that was the first time we transitioned to a different brand, maybe a more generic brand, I'm not sure, but I noticed like slight physical differences between the one pill that I was on and the next. I don't know any of the dosages from any of these time periods, so I can't speak to that, and I can't even tell you now the name brands because it's been so long. All I know is being upset when they first converted me over because I didn't understand why they had to do that. And they're like, oh, it's generic, it's all the same. come to find out years later that like these things are slightly different. So that's really frustrating. The military gaslights the shit out of you, and they definitely did in 2008. After being effectively gaslit by the Navy into believing that all pills are the same pill, I proceeded on to my first command, and I started, I guess, abusing my pill. I would go pack to pack to pack to pack without having a period because it's the Navy, and there's times where things are really uncomfortable and you don't want to do it. So I chose not to do it. Once I realized that I could do that, I would go on and on and on and on, months and months without having a period, and then I would go off my pill and have a bleed just to make sure I was still functioning okay. Not because I wanted to or actually believed that there was any necessity. I just felt like I should check on things, you know? So during this time, I don't believe I experienced any symptoms. There was only one odd thing that happened bleeding wise, but nothing truly medically noticeable during all this time that I was abusing my pill and going pack to pack to pack. I didn't have inter-period bleeding at all. I didn't really see anything like that. And my weight at this time was pretty good and stable. So nothing noteworthy here. The one thing I will say, and that frustrated the shit out of me, and I think ended up being the straw that broke the camel's back, even beside some of my later issues, was getting the pills itself. I can't say what the civilian world does because I don't remember. But for us, if we weren't on a deployment, I couldn't get more than 3 months at a time. Three pill packs basically at a time. And that drove me insane, especially since I was going straight through them. So I was effectively cutting out 3 weeks of time that I should have been covered that I was not covered. And sometimes this got a little sketchy with medical saying that I was coming in too early, and that I was, you know, I wasn't supposed to be there yet, all this stuff, which pissed me off because you guys said I could have this to protect myself for whatever reason, and you're not letting me access this thing that I need to not get pregnant. You know, I used to get really, really angry, and it still makes me angry, honestly. Why could I only get 3 at a time? Why? If I had a problem with the pill, I would have reported it. In fact, we could have come up with a piece of paper that I'd have to sign to say that I would report it, but I didn't have problems. So I could only get these limited quantities. So apart from being told by medical that I was showing up too early to collect my next set of packs, sometimes I would get a pack of 3, right? And then there would be 2 refills. So effectively, I could be covered for up to 9 months without having to go and interact with a doctor again. But I still have to go and get my prescription filled, which I'm on a ship. Our time sucks and our time off is precious. So getting to a pharmacy during normal working hours is challenging. And at the time, I was in Sasebo, Japan, okay? It's not that freaking easy to get over to medical for a junior sailor. It's not something I enjoyed or that I see as like a good functioning thing in the Navy. Like I said, the most I was able to get at once was a 6-month chunk, and that was because we were supposed to going on deployment. Well, I've had deployments go longer than 6 months, so what was I supposed to do at that time? That sucked. Like, being like gatekept with the pills has always frustrated me. So the longest period of time I could be covered without having to see a doctor would be 9 months. But then at the end of that 9 months, or if something changed, like, and I'm not talking about with me, like just say whatever, I go to medical and they're like, oh, she's due for a pap smear, so we're not gonna give you your birth control until you get your pap smear done, or we're not gonna give you your birth control until your well women's exam is done. So there was these other barriers. So I don't want to go see a doctor if I have no changes to be made. If I've been on the same thing for years now at this point, and I want to continue on the same thing, just give me the freaking prescription and carry on. But they would use your birth control as a reason to hold other over your head. And you know what? It's been a long time now, so I'm not positive if some of these things are still in place. I want to say the Navy has at least tried to listen, because now the hospitals have walk-in women's clinics. But I can't say if the same doesn't occur. But as a younger person, So 2010, 11, 12, in that time period, I had my birth control prescription held because I still owed a different appointment not related to my birth control pills. All right, so years and years and years, I'm doing fine on the pill. I don't have any pregnancy scares. I bleed when I feel like bleeding. My biggest problem in my younger days with the pills is getting the pills. The actual acquisition of the pills was the worst part about being on the birth control pill. Everything else seemed copacetic. I didn't have problems. That was then. So probably towards the end of my shore duty, so in my late 20s, maybe 28, 29, I start having bleeding in between periods. And at the time, I had stopped going pack to pack because it's such a problem at medical. I stopped going pack to pack. I make sure that I take these break periods to make sure that, you know, the timing makes sense. But so there might have been a shift in what kind of pill I was on at the time. And I do remember trying some different dosages because I started having interbleeding despite what day I was on in the pack. And it would get to the point where I would take another pill to try to stop it. But now I'm wasting the stuff. I'm in the same scenario. I'm gonna show up too early. So I was taking extra pills to try to cut the bleeding, and I didn't understand why I was bleeding. And to this day, I don't know why I was spotting in between. It could be the beginning surfacing of something that's worth diagnosing, and I still don't know the answer to that. So in an attempt to diagnose the interbleeding, I did try to talk to a couple doctors about doing blood tests, about checking stuff, and nobody seemed to have, and by nobody I mean our Navy doctors, Navy medical, did not seem interested in pursuing anything with me. Everybody told me that everything looks fine, you look normal. When I got to my next ship, I started to gain weight quite a bit and struggle with taking it off now. So now I'm like 30-ish, and it's getting harder to take the weight off. The interperiod bleeding is becoming a more like established thing. I can't get away from it. I don't think my pills are going to fix it anymore. So I asked for a thyroid panel. And again, like the Navy gives me a thyroid panel and there's nothing surprising on it. So I go back to my doc. My doc says there's a more in-depth one that he can order. So he orders it. I go to the hospital, get the blood draw. I get the blood drawn. I go back to him and he says, oh, they downgraded my test back to the basic one away from the advanced one that he had ordered. They downgraded it back to basic at the hospital because I didn't look like I had any special markers for anything. So, you know, screw me. It wasn't enough that I asked for this thing because I feel like something's wrong. They said, you're fine. You don't have any other markers. So they downgraded my test and they only gave like the basic level evaluation still. Even though my doc had asked for it. For me. Screw us both, I guess. So besides this like more in-depth thyroid panel that I've asked for, I've also asked about, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, like the BRCA or BRCA testing for breast cancer and stuff like that, because my family has a history of cancer, feminine like cancers, uterine, ovarian. We have stuff in our history that I am a candidate to be tested for. Does the Navy care? No, they don't give a crap. So at least not at the time. And this would be between the years of like 2016 to 2019. They didn't give a crap about what I wanted to ask for. They weren't going to test for anything. So I was super frustrated. I saw online that some people who got the Nexplanon implant or got a uterine implant, that they lost their periods. So I had a small hope that if I went on the arm implant, that my spotting in between, maybe I could be one of those few people. I was full aware, and I saw the reviews of other people who saw weight gain, mood issues, and increased bleeding. But I already had similar, I could already argue that the birth control pill had already put me at risk for some of that stuff, and I had or had not had certain symptoms. So I thought it was worth the risk. And if anything, the long-term ability of it, so the protection for multiple years at a time, seemed way better than fighting with medical every single time I need a birth control refill, and then going through these massive headaches to get my birth control pills restocked. So I thought that looked way better on paper, and there was the small chance that it would maybe relieve my interbleeding. So in 2021, along with getting the other thing that became mandatory at the time, I got my implant. I actually got those two things within a couple months of each other. So I think I might have gotten the implant, my first shot, and then like, what is it, a month that you have to wait, and then I got my second shot. So all of that stuff happened at the end of 2021, which makes it really hard as a logical person trying to evaluate all causalities. It makes it really hard to put a finger on, you know, what precisely happened when. Because there's multiple things that happened at the same time. We don't know. I don't know. In either case, I went on the implant, and my cycle that was inconsistent already became wildly inconsistent. And within like a month or two, I put on 10 more pounds. So there goes that. But hey, I was protected. No risk of pregnancy. So I'm plugging along, you know, not afraid of having a baby, but at this point, I am constantly bleeding to some degree. Sometimes heavier than others. In fact, it would start to get heavier, and I would be like, okay, I'm having my actual period. And in my little fitness app, I would try to start, you know, the tracking of a period, but then it would fade away after a couple days and go back to being like a little bit. And then later on, like a very short period later, now I have like the real thing that I could tell is the real thing. I bled a lot. I was bleeding all the time to some degree or not. And then very rarely I would have these like stints where I wouldn't have anything. And those would go for long stretches that didn't make sense. And by a long stretch, I mean like 6 weeks at the longest. So we're not talking months, we're talking like 6 weeks. But then on the flip side of that, I would have a month where 20 days would be bleeding or spotting. So that sucked. I tried very hard to diet and fitness my way out of it, and stress at the command got worse. Lots of culminating things, but I think I was fighting an uphill battle. I thoroughly believe I was fighting an uphill battle, and it wouldn't have mattered. It wouldn't have mattered how hard I did on the diet, and I tried so hard. Every year I've lost around 18 pounds coming into some part of the summer, and every year it's come back like glue, and it hasn't seemed to make a difference. So the doctors like to tell you that if you're on the arm implant and you're having like interbleeding, one thing that you could do is go on the pill. In addition to the arm implant, you could go on the pill to try to mitigate these effects. Why would I do that when the whole point of going on the arm implant was to not take any more pills and not worry about the periodicity and the rescheduling and all the crap related to the pills? Went on the implant to not have to take the pill. So why would I go and get on a pill and put more in my body to try to stop these side effects that are happening? So I did not do that. I did notice, however, going from the pill to the arm implant, that some stuff, besides my body weight, I did have some breakouts in areas that I didn't really experience breakouts before. So for example, my chin and jawline and my cheeks, I've never had hardcore acne. It's always been in like my T-line. So in between here, around my eyebrows, the base of my nose, above my mouth, and my chin have always been the hot spots for my oil buildup and acne. As a teenager into adulthood still. But I never had anything on like my cheeks or my chin my cheeks in my jawline until I transitioned from the pill to the arm implant, and I just now learned that it's because there was a hormonal change there. Apparently, when people go off of the pill altogether, they sometimes have like a second puberty or something. You know, they have effects that are a little bit unstable for a while. Well, I guess I did that. I had that period of time of instability with acne and stuff like that. Luckily, that stuff faded away with time, but it was really frustrating for a little while. I never had, you know, things here, and they would keep coming back. I was so frustrated. And then I decided that I wasn't going to trust the Navy anymore, and I went out in town and I paid a wellness clinic in California to do blood tests now. The results of the blood draw, I really liked this doctor in San Diego, and I go to sit down with this doctor and he asks me a series of questions before he gives me the results of my blood panel. He asked me to describe symptoms that I feel like I'm having and things that I would like to not have happen. If I could optimize my wellness, what would that look like, and what are the things that I think right now are not good? So I went through a whole slew of things with him. He would ask me a prompt question. I would give him a thorough response. We got done with that. He had circled stuff on my paperwork, and then he turned it back to me and he's like, this thing you're describing is evident here, 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 and here. That's an established symptom of this, and this. I was so shocked. And for once in my life, I felt validated. I felt like somebody listened to me, and its proof is in the freaking blood work. At the time I was showing anemic, extremely low iron, low in some other stuff. And what he explained to me about the possible symptoms of that made sense. It made sense to look anemic when I'm bleeding all the time. You know, stuff like, and my fatigue, like, things made sense for once. Somebody listened. I paid out of my pocket for this. Obviously, not every sailor out there could afford this kind of thing, and I feel like we shouldn't have to. We should be able to go to our doctors and say, hey, something doesn't feel right. Can we search this out? But then again, there's a lot of people trying to bullshit and get out of work and get out of the hard jobs, so I'm sure that Navy Medical fields a lot of Looney Tunes folks. But for those of us who just I'm just trying to do my job better and not feel like crap all the time and not worry about whether or not I'm gonna bleed unexpectedly. I'm trying to be healthier and perform better. You would think that there would be a little more willingness to accommodate, but it all comes back to manning and money, and there ain't enough of that to go around, so whatever. I paid out of pocket at this clinic with this doctor. He gave me some stuff to try, and then we reevaluated in 6 weeks. I got another blood panel, and things had changed. Things had improved based on the things that he had given me to try. And we were going to go forward again. And at that time, he started to say that, we could see indications of a thyroid issue. And then I had to move, unfortunately. So I didn't get to continue with this doctor or this process. But I strongly felt that a lot of my symptoms and stuff that I was trying to address could be traced back to the Nexplanon. That the biggest step I could do would be to get that removed. So finally, I PCS'd. Here we are. New state, new year, no Nexplanon. So this is where part of my hesitation about, evaluating my week-to-week weight loss comes in, because I'm not sure if I'm just leveling out and what's my real state of being. And that's why I think I'm gonna wait until the end of the month, save up some money because I'm in a different financial stability situation now. Get a new blood test, maybe try to find a DEXA scan. As of right now, it looks like the closest one is 2.5 hours from here. That sucks. That was not the case in San Diego. But we're gonna try to get some real world evaluations of things of where I am now and then go from there. So if my blood work still looks reminiscent to when I saw that doc, and they can do telehealth, so I could go back to that same person in San Diego over phone now that I'm an established customer with them, and we could continue on. But I want to figure out, you know, my new baseline. Yeah, so that's my biggest change was going off of all birth control. Let's see if it helps. I'll see you in the next one.